Welcome to Your Empire's monthly market update. I'm Lauren from Melbourne. We've got Chris Gray from Sydney and Zoran from Brisbane. We're here to tell you about what's been going on in the market over the last month at least. I might start by giving you a bit of an update about the Melbourne property market, which is choppy to say the least. We've got 15% more stock on market than we would normally have for this time of year. However, that extra 15% is predominantly investor exit property or B or C grade properties that are being sold. If you're looking at properties above 5 million across Stonington, Bayside and Port Phillip, which are in a blue chip ring, there's actually only about 110 properties available above 5 million to 15 million, which is a really small slice of the market. Which is meaning that for those really good blue chip properties, it's actually fairly tricky to get into the market because of those properties across those municipalities, they need to meet your specific criteria. But it's interesting times. Chris, what are you seeing over in Sydney?
Look, obviously the major thing is wars going on around the world, petrol prices going up, bloody RBA putting everything up, and it's a nightmare. But again, we've all been through these cycles for the last 2 or 3 decades, and the main thing is it's opportunity. So when we had COVID, then people were saying, "Oh no, the world's coming to an end. I shouldn't be buying." But the people that did buy, they're the ones that made the money. And in hindsight, people said, "Oh, I should have bought because the interest rates were a lot lower and I could have afforded more," but they didn't do anything. Again, now's the chance for them to go and do it, because before they're starting to complain that there's no properties, the prices are going up, they can't afford to get in. This will create some people to sit on the fence, and that leads to other opportunities. But again, I can bet that 99% of people won't take advantage of it.
What about you, Zoran? How's hot Brisbane going?
Still hot, still hot. So look, I definitely echo Chris's comments there. I think that with chaos becomes opportunity, and that is right now. I think there's a lot of people who will fence sit as a result of what's going on globally and fuel prices and interest rates and those sort of things. There is light at the end of all of these tunnels. Buy yourself an electric car, and you don't even have to worry about that petrol price thing. So advice number one. But no, in all seriousness, where I'm actually quite excited to see what happens in Brisbane with this opportunity, because it means that hopefully we get access to a few more properties as those fence sitters get out there and wait, and we can get some great deals. That's what I'm hoping for. So yeah, if you're a bit of a contrarian, like we all know Chris and our team is, now is the time to buckle up and get out there and buy some. And we've got clients now who have highlighted that opportunity. I've got one client who's given me instruction. He wants 3 properties before the end of the financial year. So there are people out there who take this opportunity window very seriously as well.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Zoran. But to be fair, you need to have money, right? And I think that's a bit of a blanket thing to put out there to people, as though you can just go out and buy property because it's a good opportunity to do so. But a lot of people don't have any money left, and what they did have left has been put into increased rates, increased petrol, increased costs. So that is an unfortunate thing for many people, particularly those young families who are trying to get ahead and trying to invest in properties where they might have been able to have that opportunity with a few rate reductions. They've been pushed out. And what we will see, or what I believe we will see, and what we're seeing at the moment, is we're getting interstate and overseas and expats buying up property in Victoria. Now, and that's great because there's always someone to buy the property. But I think it's really bad for the people who live locally and who are in Australia and who are really struggling, because it should be an even playing field. And for me, I think the rich are going to get richer, the poor are going to get poorer. And unless you've got that extra income to be able to subsidize the cash flow that you need to hold an extra property, it's all great to have the capital growth at the end, but you've got to be able to cash flow it. And I think, perhaps that's something we could talk about as a team, to get someone who might be able to give some of our listeners some advice on how that might be a possibility for them moving forward, particularly you, Chris, with your experience in accounting. I think that's something that would be helpful, because it's all good and well for us to say buy now, but if you don't have any extra money, that's not quite so easy.
And look, that's very true, that the rich do get richer and the poor do get poorer. And I guess that's the reality of what happens. And that's why for most of our clients, for all 3 of us in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane, then we are concentrating on the blue chip suburbs. Again, you're buying properties $2 to $5 million plus for homes. We're at kind of $1 or $2 million for investments and stuff. And it is the people with money that can do that. But at the same time, there is lots of investors out there that will do whatever it takes to get in the market, and they'll do things like rent vesting. So I not buying a family home, go and invest where the money's going to get you a better return, then emotionally go and invest in your home wherever you want to, because you're renting rather than buying. So I think a lot of it is a case of, I guess, really setting your goals. And if you want to get there, even if you don't fit the normal boundaries, that's when you've got to find these contrarian ideas.
I think that that's an excellent point that you make there, because there are ways to do it. And I know that particularly in Victoria, we're arguably in our softest market. I mean, I've been in property 25 years, and this would be the softest I've seen it, where we've got buyers who have got real trepidation, vendors who are sort of keeping their backs up against the wall on price. But it's great buying. It's great buying if you can do it. So looking at the appropriate structure, getting the right advice from both mortgage brokers, financial planners, and accountants, so long as they're not taking a clip somewhere else. I think that's a great way to start thinking about how you might be able to enter the market at a time where it is really good buying. What else have we got to talk about today, guys? Is there any hot topics that we need to tackle?
We can quickly look at the stats for last month coming up from February, and just to read through them. Sydney is nothing, 0 for the month, minus 0.1% for the quarter, and 6% annually. Melbourne's 0% for the month, minus 0.4% for the quarter, and 4.7 annually. Brisbane up 1.6 for the month, 4.8 for the quarter, and 17.3% for annually. So again, it just goes to show that there is still lots of different markets around Australia. And as we always say, is even if something's gone up 0, it can be that the blue chip areas with no stock are still rising in value. And then the places that have got massive oversupply from tens of thousands of units, they're the ones that are going down, because again, when you get higher interest rates and a lot of conflict, then you don't get the foreign investors coming in, snapping up those brand new ones that the Aussies generally wouldn't touch.
Yeah, well, I've got a question here for you, and I'd be interested to know your thoughts on this. We've often talked about Perth, how basically no one touched Perth for 17 years, and then suddenly it had a big peak. And our view is that it's probably having a peak, and it won't consistently be like that. We know that a lot of just purely investment advisors are now advising against Perth and saying going to Melbourne, right? So every city's got a different time and place where it's a good time to be buying. But what do we think about Brisbane? I mean, how long can their hot streak go for? And I know that you're a little bit biased, Zoran, but I am interested to know, how long can it keep going this way? Because it used to be the ugly sister to Melbourne and Sydney, and it's
Excuse me. We were never an ugly sister, thank you.
You were the hot one. Let's be clear about that. But where do we think it's going?
I think Melbourne's in third place on the capital city price for now and forever. I think Brisbane fundamentally has changed in a post-COVID environment. I think that the infrastructure and the marketing is going to fundamentally change the Southeast Queensland market. And I say that, Southeast Queensland deliberately, because Gold and Sunshine Coasts are also really benefiting from, all of these different factors contributing into our economy here locally. So, but I do agree. How sustainable is like 17% per annum? You got to remember, we played catch up for a lot of time where we were undervalued. That's what I think the historical thing is to consider. So I think that growth will subdue, and it will come down to, even more importantly, property selection on properties that will outperform the averages rather than underperform. Because when a market turns, we've got that saying, all boats will float on a rising tide. But that's not the case when that is receding and our market softens. They don't all perform the same. And that's where a buyer's agent is critical. A good buyer's agent, because we all know there's a lot of cheap and cheerful options out there buying anything to get a deal.
I think that's a really interesting point. I mean, I'm going to go to two things, Zoran. Until you've got the AFL Grand Final, the AO, and the Grand Prix, I don't think you're ever going to be sitting in second place for long, but you keep going down that path. But to the other point, using a decent buyer's agent, they are coming out of the woodwork like it is nobody's business. You're a butcher yesterday, you're a buyer's agent today. I think it's remiss of us not to bring up that there is a course being held in Sydney where basically you can learn online how to become a millionaire buyer's agent. And it is bullshit. Pardon my language, but it is no way to learn how to be a buyer's agent. And anyone who is out there interviewing, you need to be really, really, really careful about who you're selecting. Pay peanuts, you're going to get monkeys. Unless they've got experience, they've got infrastructure, they've got knowledge, they've got contacts, you shouldn't be touching them. There are websites up there purporting to say that they are the #1 buyer's advocate in certain areas. You, as the consumer, need to be very, very, very careful who you select. In Melbourne at the moment, we are actually seeing buyer's agents from this particular course in Sydney buying properties in Melbourne sight unseen and getting the real estate agent to take a video for their client. It is an absolute conflict. It's lazy work and you need to be careful. So on that very happy note, thanks for joining us again. We will see you next month. I'm Lauren Staley from Your Empire in Melbourne. We've got Chris Gray from Your Empire in Sydney and Zoran Solano from The Ugly Sister in Brisbane.